Hi friends, welcome to episode 59. It's actually Saturday morning. I'm going to do this today and give it a try and see how we get on with our plan of work. It's just after 6 o'clock. It's pretty nippy out there. It's about 2 degrees and it's been raining. So it's both damp and cold in here, and that'll restrict some of the things I can do unless the weather improves over the weekend. Let's hope it does. Last weekend, I posed a question. What is that little cubby hole inside the RT? It was a question that was actually posed by my good friend Norman Kemp, and I didn't know. I had a funny feeling it was for some form of paperwork. But anyway, we have now discovered the answer, and I'll do that later on. Today, I'm going to do some more rubbing down of that beading. Yes, I know it's not exciting. That's the joys of owning an RT. You have to do all this stuff, unfortunately. I do want to get that beading so it looks really nice, and I'm trying to lose as much of the wood grain as possible. It's been really nicely milled, but obviously there's a bit of grain in it, and I want to try and lose that by a few coats of paint. So today I'm going to do some rubbing down. That will be the first project. Actually, no, it won't be the first project. The first project's going to be putting the kettle on. I think that'll be the very first thing to do. So anyway, sit back, enjoy it. Let's see how we get on with this episode 59.
Fun fact, back in the 70s, the 59 was the longest bus route in London, running from Old Coulsdon to West Hampstead. But then there's Green Line services, are much longer than that, and I'm sure there's a few country routes that were quite long as well. Anyway, back to the plot. Oh, the weather was terrible this weekend. I really had hoped we were going to get better weather. I was keeping an eye on the weather forecast last week, because you get them about a week in advance, don't you? And it showed it as being dry at about 6 to 7 degrees, and I thought that's ideal for doing these ceiling panels. Unfortunately, as the week went on, the reality of it was diminishing, and we ended up with it pouring down with rain on both days. So I had to quickly change my plans to do as little painting as possible and as much of some of the other jobs that I needed to do. Something that's hung over for years. In fact, when I did this offside on the RT over 30 years ago now, I never got it finished, obviously. This bit of wood was broken. It was at the top, part of it was missing. So when Darryl was down a couple of times, I was thinking of asking him to do it, but we kind of just run out of time. And I thought it'd be an easy enough job for me to do when I get a spare 5 minutes. Although in reality, it's never going to be 5 minutes, is it? In fact, I think it took a couple of hours to do this. But anyway, so in the diagram, you can see that yellow piece of wood there. That's the bit I need to replace. And luckily, as I said, I've got about 80% of that wood. So in the top bit is quite easy to work out what was there. Right, so this is it. That's that bit of wood. As you can see, the top part there is just missing. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to line it up with the old bolt holes. Interestingly, and perhaps not interestingly, but these use 3/4 bolts, and they're quite long because they've got to go through 3 bits of wood at one point. And I've been trying to get hold of some of them, and they are either hugely expensive or not available. So I might end up having to use a metric bolt. I don't want to do that really, because I'm going to end up with metric and imperial and everything else on there. So anyway, never mind. So the first thing to do is put it back in to make sure everything lines up, which it does, and then to take this off and then use it as a template on a piece of wood that I happen to have laying around. Yeah, so the first thing I need to do is just line it up with the wood. I have actually drawn it out on that piece of wood, but then I like to check again. And that little bit at the top, up by the top of my hand, was there where the clamp is. That's the little extra extended bit on the end there. I have one of the other things I do is I fiddle around. I pre-paint when I've got the paint out. I'll often paint bits of wood just in case. You might wonder why, but it's very handy if you need to grab a piece of wood and then do a bit of this stuff on it. You can draw all my lines on it and everything's nice and easy. So plus the fact it acts as a good base coat, even though you lose most of it. So yeah, so that's all I got to do is make that. Now that curvature is the curvature for the bottom of the bus. Now it's very easy to do that with this piece of wood, but the big bits that go down from where the cant rail is, that's where the white band is, or the cream band on a red RT, that goes all the way down to where this piece of wood is, and that pulls in towards the bottom. And what you have to do, what I did do on this, was to put the straight bits of wood in, because originally they were straight, bolt them up at the bottom and then pull them back in towards the top. So the bottom of these bits of wood are actually under tension, and when I took one of the bolts out, it was quite obvious because the wood plinked out. So yeah, but there's no other way of doing it. The other way of doing it, I suppose, would be to steam the wood. My brother will know how to do that, I'm sure, but it does seem like a hell of a lot of faff when all you need to do simply is just you know, pull the thing in using clamps, which is exactly what I did, and then bolt through them. So there we are. So that's me making this little bit of timber here. So the last thing I needed to do before popping any paint on it was to drill some holes in it. So using the original holes that were on the other piece of wood on the old bit, and some G-clamps just to hold it in place while I drilled the holes. Just make sure they're in the centre, because it's very easy to go off centre with that. The other thing is, this is actually, if you look very carefully, I don't know if you can see it, but that drill bit is actually smaller than the holes that are original, and the reason for that is, I'll come back in a minute and I'm going to bore you with that, but I'll put a bigger drill bit through there, and then I'll make sure it all lines up from the front to the back. So anyway, yeah, there's that little job done. Right, so the ceiling hasn't quite left us alone yet, and I needed to make these two little crescent shaped bits of wood. What they do is they hold the advert panel, that little advert panel with the light bulb in it, onto the front bulkhead, and I've hunted high and low for these, and I can't find them anywhere. They wouldn't have rotted out because the interior wood's not been too bad. So I don't know where they've gone. So best thing to do is I put one of the advert panels actually on there, on that bit of wood, and then marked around it with a pencil, and then marked an inch or so, or whatever it is, upwards, and cut them out. Right, so that's the final product. Some paint slapped on them, and it is slapped as well, just looking at it, because I've got to run. If you go all the way across there, second to final hole, there's a little run there, but I think, unfortunately, this paint is that Leyland paint I bought, and it takes an age to go off. Most primers go off really quickly. I was going to have a bit of a problem with primers later on, actually, when I got to do around the engine compartment, but more on that later. So anyway, the original piece of wood is that piece just below the one that I've made. Now I'll be honest with you, I did fess over, do I remake the top of this, just sort of make that bit at the top and then sort of adhere it on somehow, or do I replace the whole thing? And I decided in the end to replace it. It's not structural, by the way, it is only just a packing piece. And there's all it holds is a really lightweight piece of folded aluminium. It really, all of that effort that they went to narrow that aperture by the auto lube, and I'm guessing here, Brian Watkinson will know more, if they'd specified the two panels to be the same size, although the one on the battery crate is actually slightly different because it's got a bit of beading at the bottom, and the auto lube panel doesn't have it. But no, I can't understand why, but this little narrowing piece is all very odd. And then if you look at the top, I've got my little interior bits done for the advert panels, so they're done and painted. So that's a job done and dusted. Oh well, yeah, because the weather was so horrid, this is one job. I had planned to do it anyway, so it's not something that I thought, oh, it's a horrible, crappy day, so I'll do this. This is the first wet rub down of these bits of beading. These are the bits of the beading that go in the middle. You might remember from the last episode that I made up some undercoat with a slightly yellowy tint. The reason for that is if you keep putting on white, you really can't see where you are with it, if you see what I mean. So you might end up with sections of the paint missing. So hence the reason doing that, it colour codes it, so I know that I've got paint over the whole thing. I have actually gone a bit heavy on it. Wherever there's bits I'm not happy with, I'll be a bit harder on it. But anyway, that's a bit of very fine 1200 wet and dry sort of rubbing down paper. So I do like that. I've got stacks of it in the barn. But anyway, so that's that. So I did all of them, and yeah, there was about 20 of them now. So yeah, a nice little job. And the good thing is, because it was horribly cold, that bucket is hot. I got hot water in there, so it warmed my hands up a treat. Lovely. That's the sort of job you want to be doing, frankly. So there we are. So that's that out the way as well. Right, before we move off the rubbing down of this beading, this is the beading that you saw me doing before. Now this actually, I'm not going to worry too much about this. This actually is a sort of an overrun piece. I do this occasionally. What I do is if I've got the paintbrush out, I'll do a couple of extra bits of beading. So I've got some spare. So if anything goes wrong, I don't have to go back to sort of scratch and do another load of coats of paint, which you can take forever. So I've already got a couple of extra prepped bits. But if you look closely at this, although this has been very nicely machined, and credit to my brother for finding someone to do it, you can actually see, if you look at it, it looks, it's all lumpy and horrible. And that's not my paint, that's actually the wood. So the purpose of what I'm doing is to lose as much of that as I possibly can, because I want to get this to look like the beading on the outside of the bus, where you haven't got all this old crud because it's aluminium. But I don't want to use aluminium, I'm using wood. Yeah, so that's what I'm trying to do. So you can see the grain in there, you can see all the lumpy bits in there as well. None of that is a result of the paint, that's all as a result of the bits of wood that are there. And by the way, I did hand rub some of these down as well. This one's probably escaped that. Yeah, all the ones that are inside the bus, before I even started putting paint on them, I nibbed them off a bit with a bit of sandpaper. So there you are. That's the reason why I'm doing it. Right, something else that was on my list of things to do was this bulkhead at the back of the engine. When I took the rocker box cover off, as you can see, there are all the rockers, there was the original Lincoln green paint identified. So I thought, right, okay, I want to do this. It's going to be black. There are bits, you can just about see underneath part of that pipe, you can see a little bit of the black peeking through. So originally these bulkheads were black, they weren't green. I think that's when they've done the body at Aldenham. They've taken the engine out, the chassis is gone, and they've just blown it over. And I can't blame them for doing that, because I think that's probably the most expedient way of doing it. It's just to spray everything you're not going to see. But I wasn't best happy with that. You've got a bit of silver in there, you've got a bit of the green that I've sprayed in there as well, plus the old Lincoln green, which looks lovely. So I'm not entirely sure what that text means. It might mean London Country. That could possibly be what it means. But why write that on it when it's a green bus? Oh, well, never mind. Well, I know some buses did go from red to green and green to red and so on and so forth, right up to the point when London Country became part of the National Bus Company. So that's probably what that means. It's probably London Country. Anyway, so I needed to get on with this as well. So there's a little project to do. Right, I probably put too much thought into this, but while I was away, I thought, well, painting this is going to be a bit of a faff with all that pipe work in there. And that pipe work is a modification. They were never there when the RTs were built, because they weren't built with heaters. So these are all the heater pipes. Unfortunately, they've put a rather odd sized nut just on the back there, and I didn't have a spanner for it. So this is Whitworth. I've got a Whitworth socket set. So that's my Whitworth there. I think quarter or something or other. I can't remember what it was now, but anyway, it doesn't matter, does it? So I wanted to take that off. I've already removed the little rubber pipe that was on the end, the hose that goes off there towards the radiator. It is, I think it looks like some more later day modification that's gone on, because it's not a proper elbow pipe. So I'm going to try and get a proper elbow pipe for it when I replace it. All of these little rubber connectors you see across the top, they're all going to be replaced. Now, I genuinely didn't want to start stripping this engine down. It's not the engine, but you know what I mean. I want to get this started up, and then we can do all this stuff later. But this one, in order for me to get some paint on that bulkhead, I thought best bet, I'm going to be sort of, I won't get the sander in there, so I'm going to do this with. Now, the other thing I'm doing there, you can see I'm recovering the bolts. One of the things I've learned over a long period of time of fiddling around with this thing is don't let the bolts go, because then you end up struggling sometimes. I mean, these things would be quite easy to change. Just use a more modern thread, but I'm not going to do that. These are the original ones, and they are Whitworth, so they're staying. So anyway, yeah, I managed to get this pipe off in the end, but what I'm going to be, I have to be very careful when I'm taking these nuts and bolts out, that they don't fall down into the engine. And I've got this sheet there, and that sheet is just to protect the rockers and everything. But the last thing you want is something falling down. Now they've got a nut on the back, plus a split washer, a spring washer, and a standard washer. So I've had to keep all of them. And ironically, I'll say ironically really, it's probably not the right word, but the one at this end towards the front of the camera, there was like 4 little washers in there, and I don't know why they packed it out for some reason with these washers. But anyway, yeah, I've just pointed out I've just lost a washer down the back of the engine. So this is what it looks like with that pipe removed. Yeah, I've got my impact driver just there, just in shot. I needed that to try and get the Jubilee clips off. I also, although it's not quite clear in this shot, but just there evident, just an edge there was a pipe, and I had to remove that as well so I can get access to it. Right, so this is what it looks like with most of the paint removed. Yeah, not great for access, but yeah, but everything's off now. Well, almost everything's off. There's still a few little bits and pieces, but I did that on Saturday, so I washed it all off Saturday because it's a bit of an oily place, an engine, as you're probably well aware, to make sure the paint can adhere to it. Yeah, so there we are. That's what it looks like without any paint on it. Right, this is the first primer coat that I laid in on Sunday morning. Now, this is cellulose based. It's an acid etch primer. Unfortunately, normally they'll dry really fast. It'll be touch dry probably about half an hour. Because of the cold, the damp, and all the other things that were going on down the barn that day, it didn't dry for a long while. Yeah, I was getting a little bit panicky on this because it's taking so long for the primer to dry. I wanted to nib it off and then put the black paint on. But anyway, eventually I got it done. So that's what it looks like on Sunday evening. It's not going to get away with just one coat. I mean, you know that with me. It's going to be several coats. Well, maybe 2, maybe another 2 more perhaps. But I'll go up their barn this weekend and I'll flat that off again, and then pop some more paint on it. Maybe if I'm lucky, I might be able to put a coat on Saturday and a coat on Sunday. But the weather's not looking good for this coming weekend either, so I might have to just put the coat on Saturday and then come back the following week and do it the following week. So anyway, that's that plan. I've got the hose, the pipe work you saw before. That's in my car at the moment, and I'm going to try and ponce some bits and pieces from the workshop at work. There was a little tap on there as well, and that had seized solid. So thankfully I got it off on the bench, and I managed to free it off now, so the tap works. Hurrah! Another thing that works on the RT. But I'm still waiting for those injectors to come back from that chap. I'm still waiting for the conduit to be done that carries the main cables to the back of the bus. I could probably cheat that by just simply putting some batteries somewhere around the side of the bus and then wiring into them just temporarily, because I do want to turn this over without the injectors in situ. So that's a job that I need to do, and I'm probably going to put another coat of green on that front as well before I took all that masking off, because there's a couple of little bits that I thought might be able to, could probably do a little bit better with them. So anyway, so that's that. That's the engine compartment. Right, I hope you don't mind me digressing a little bit. This is Mark Davis's Routemaster RM158, which was delivered new to Walthamstow Garage many eons back. Anyway, Mark wanted to pick up some hardboard. He spotted that a local DIY shop was closing down and decided that the bus was the ideal vehicle to go and pick it up in. Much probably to the surprise of the people in the car park. But there we go, another excellent use for a bus. Right, and almost finally, a quick update on the question posed to me by my good friend Norman Kemp.
Last week, you might recall, I posed a question. What was this little cubby hole used for on RTs. They're also on RFs as well. And this sits just above the fare chart on the lower saloon on the offside of an RT. Now, thanks very much for Johnny for pointing out in the comments below the previous edition. In latter years, this was used to put coin bags. Bus conductors used to stick them in there. But that wasn't the original purpose for this. And I'm very grateful for the very knowledgeable people like David Jones, Brian Watkinson and Wesley for working out exactly what this was used for. Now, you probably can't see that, but there's a hole there that goes all the way through from the bottom straight to the top. And anything that you put in this clearly would simply just fall through. So that was a bit of a puzzle, really. Anyway, it turns out this is a little bit of a clue. This is a strengthening piece. And when I saw that, I thought, I wonder if there's some sort of band or something that would hold whatever is in there in its place. Now, RTs and RMs as well did have little extra features, like the RTs used to have a wood saw in the cab for sawing off the dog rail. If anybody went under the bus, you'd use a wood saw, although not very practical, frankly. But so anyway, these, there you go, that was used for a copy of the condition of carriage. So it's sat just over the top of the fare chart. So the fare chart's down here, and here it is. As I said, RFs also had them. Now, the to stop them getting pinched, the little chain connected between this and a little metal plate that the conditions of carriage was adhered to. So that's what it's for the conditions of carriage. So thank you very much for everyone that's commented on it. It is useful to know exactly what it is. Norman told me, and Norman's got a huge amount of experience, that he'd seen online people asking questions what they were, and nobody came up with a definitive answer. So I think actually with all of us putting our collective heads together, we managed to work out exactly what it was. So once again, thanks very much for your comments. I'm now going to spray this, actually. I'm going to spray the back of this because I don't like bare aluminium. It looks horrid. Although you don't see it, to be honest with you. You're not going to see that, but yeah, it doesn't look very good.
Well, that's that little conundrum solved. If only they were all so easy. But anyway, as they say in the film industry, that's a wrap on episode 59. So thank you very much for viewing. If you've got any comments, please stick them below. I'm more than happy to see them, and I'll try and get an answer when I get a moment to do the tappy thing. But anyway, so thank you very much for watching. YouTube, as usual, would recommend some more videos that you may or may not find interesting, especially if you've got a serious problem with insomnia. So thanks very much, and I look forward to getting up the barn again this weekend. Hopefully, although the weather's not looking very good, but hopefully I'll be able to get a few more jobs done. So thanks very much, and I look forward to seeing you next time.